Hi everyone, this is the Decentralized Voices podcast. My name is Daria and I'm excited to have Lindsay Casale, CMO at Pi Squared. In this episode, we'll explore the current state of marketing in Web3, the types of marketers each company stage requires, and should a person stick with one community or be independent. If you're a hiring manager or a marketer seeking a role in Web3, this conversation will be amazingly helpful to you. Stay with us for the whole episode and share it with your friends. Lindsay, I'm happy to have you. Please share exciting or maybe non-obvious facts about your background.
Well, thanks so much for having me. Big fan of the podcast. So happy to be on here. As you mentioned, Chief Marketing Officer at Pi Squared. If you didn't know, we're building Facet, and that is a new type of infrastructure for Web3 that doesn't involve a blockchain, believe it or not. So that means it's faster, verifiable, and decentralized. And I have been pretty busy since I joined the team. I'm officially a CMO back in March. They've kept me quite busy. So we launched our DevNet in June, wrapped that up just in time for ECC. And then at ECC, we actually released our FastSet white paper detailing the infrastructure I was just mentioning. By the time this airs, we will have surpassed 100K TPS with less than 100 millisecond finality. So that is sort of the big performance differentiator, and really excited to amplify that and share that with our community. And then we're going to be gearing up for testnet later this summer. It's been a blast, a wild ride. The team has been amazing and welcoming. I previously was head of marketing at Nil Foundation, leading their marketing team there, took them through a couple of test nets. And then before that, Mina Foundation as their head of comms, overseeing public relations, events, ecosystem communications. And then before Web3, I actually worked in tech. I worked at SoFi, which is, fintech, personal finance for 5 years, managing their member benefits marketing team. And before that, I was at Salesforce, which you've probably heard of.
Yeah, for sure.
Huge SaaS company. And I was on their strategic events team, and I was involved in 3 Dreamforce events, which is one of the biggest tech conferences in the world, bringing like 75,000 people to San Francisco every year.
Lindsay, share how did you decide that Web3 is the place to grow and develop your career as a marketer?
Well, it took a while. It wasn't just I woke up one day and I'm going to join Web3 or crypto. It was kind of the culmination of many things. I'll go back about 10 years ago to 2015. I was living in San Francisco and I met Bitcoin maxi Dan Hild, which many people are familiar with in SF. And he invited me and some of my friends to Bitcoin meetups in San Francisco. And, I kind of just went for like the free drinks and like a networking opportunity. But, he was hosting panels and they were handing out, cards with QR codes to scan and claim some Bitcoin. And I thought it was like interesting. Dabbled in some retail investing, but I think I was at Salesforce at the time. I was pretty happy in Web 2. It's obviously an emerging industries. Wasn't really interested. Then I think maybe a year or two later, my friend actually started a crypto company in SF. He was a little bit early, but he asked me to kind of help with some of the marketing on the side and doing some events with him, which of course I did. And funny enough, that same friend ended up joining me when I started working at SoFi years later. And together we actually brought SoFi crypto to market to our members. And I think it was in 2018, 2019 timeframe. And it was met with, such a strong response. It was gaining a lot of traction in the mainstream, and people were really excited about that product. So then, kind of how I ended up actually working in crypto is after about 5 years at SoFi, I reconnected with my old boss, Claire Cart, and she is the current CMO at Aztec.
Yeah.
And at the time, she was leading marketing at Mina Foundation. We reconnected. I told her I was bored. I was looking for something new. And she's like, oh, well, you should come work in crypto. You should come work on my marketing team. And I was like, absolutely not. Like, I'm not working in this industry. Like, I just don't know anything about it. I just don't know what I don't know, right? And so she's like, let me sort of bring you under my wing. Let me help introduce you to this new world. And it took some convincing, but eventually I took the plunge, and here I am.
I didn't know that you worked together with Claire and you entered the space because of her
I
invitation.
did. Yeah, she was very persistent. I'm very glad she did. It's been, of course, a lot of ups and downs, but I think it's one of the best career decisions I've made. I think, crypto's not for the weak of heart, and it's not good for someone who doesn't like constant change. But that's an environment I thrive in and that I was kind of missing in the, general tech world, which moves very slowly, very bureaucratic. Of course you can join a tech startup, but then it gets to a certain point where it kind of is slow and it's hard to be creative, it's hard to move fast. And that's what I was looking for.
Thanks for sharing. And let's talk about the challenges in landing job in Web3, because there are many processes and differences in Web2 and Web3. So can you share your experience? Did you have any challenges? And are there any differences between non-tech roles and tech roles from
Yeah.
your experience and from your perspective?
I think the biggest challenge of landing a job in Web3 is if you're not already in the space, people don't want to educate you, right? There's a very steep learning curve. So now, me, being a few years in at this point, I'm a huge advocate of my friends that are like crypto curious. They work in Web2, they're super successful marketers. And I actually try to connect them with recruiters, with hiring teams, even if they have to take maybe like a slightly more entry level but lower level position to kind of learn the ropes and understand the industry. I it's sad to say I've been kind of unsuccessful because we're so biased and we only want to prioritize those that are already in Web3, which I think is a huge mistake, right? Because everyone's getting into like TikTok now, video content, email, demand market, like all these things that Web2 folks are incredible at. And we're just like fumbling through it. So I think, that's a separate conversation for, the industry as a whole. But I think
Yeah.
that's a major barrier, right? Just like the inclusivity of it. And then I think too, if you're already in the space, I think the biggest challenge in landing a job is, you have to be a good networker. And if you don't like putting yourself out there, either online and in real life, it's a really, really big disadvantage. I'm actually a very introverted person. So I have to like force myself to be on Twitter, to engage with folks, to, walk up to someone at a conference. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for a lot of us. But if you do it, I think you'll find you'll very quickly make great, strong connections that are going to benefit you down the line. And I have like multiple examples of doing this. I think one example is, when I first joined Mia, that was my first job in Web3. I really looked to my team as a resource, as people to help me navigate and connect me to others in the space. And that was actually a great strategy. And what I recommend others do that are new to the space or just new, in general, to start with your team and work out. And so what ended up happening is I made relationships through my team with our ecosystem partners or with, external contacts. So then when I actually went to go leave Mina, I was reaching out to those people and saying, "Hey, I'm leaving Mina. It was great working together." And I had multiple people being like, "Would you like to come work for me? I'm hiring this. Like, was this something you'd be interested in?" So it was actually very easy for me to find a job because I had established those relationships and nurtured them. Because you never know who you might need or need to rely on, or who might need
Yeah.
you and who you can help. I'd say like networking is the biggest challenge, but also the biggest opportunity for landing that job in Web3.
Do you see the differences in treating tech and non-tech people in Web3, if we talk about hiring process and in general? Like,
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I haven't hired a ton of, technical folks with my background in marketing. I would say for technical roles, I think it's the process is a little less formal. I see it becoming more formal as time goes on, but you're not doing extensive interviews for months and months. You're not doing, I mean, some people are, but a lot of my experience is that I have a few interviews and I'm essentially hired because I've already built that relationship and trust. And that's where the networking piece comes in. Of course, if they don't know you, they're going to be more stringent. I think my main interview actually was like 11 people and like like it was kind of ridiculous. But other experiences
okay.
haven't been like that, with Pi Squared, with no foundation. It was all based on relationships, my track record, just how I'm showing up in the industry. So I think that's important. And I think that probably applies to tech roles too. Like if they know your work, if they have a strong relationship with you, it's a no-brainer. They don't need to go through the bureaucracy of, a long drawn out hiring process.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I also see the differences when tech roles don't have home tasks and non-tech roles more often have these home tasks because tech teams try to evaluate and understand is this person okay or not okay. And in tech, it's more obvious probably to them to understand how to evaluate and how to understand if this person is great or not.
For sure.
I know that Web3 founders often don't understand 100% what exactly branding is, like communications, growth, content, social, community, like all these types of marketing and BD partnership. So, and they call it marketing for everything. And the result, a lot of professionals try to fit into one word marketing. So do you think can it be fixed or not?
It is unfortunate that so many marketing job descriptions look like this. I've seen it, I've experienced it. In terms of how it can be fixed, I think it's really just about educating and level setting with founders because a lot of them are technical and they simply don't know what marketing should own or actually that there's all these different skill sets required to do each of these jobs really well. So, of course, I could be myself. I can do all these jobs, but I'm actually like really good at like three of them versus six or seven of them. And that's where my focus really should be. So, I think it requires, again, setting expectations and educating founders about what marketing looks like. And that job is like up to us as marketers. So, perfect example, I was speaking to a founder at an event, I think it was ECC last year. And he's like, I'm trying to make my first marketing hire. Here's all the things I wanted to, here's all the things I want them to do. And I'm like, no, you can't expect a marketer to do all that and be good at it. And even if they can do all of it, they don't have time to do all of it well. So you're setting yourself up and them for failure for the long term. So I just think it's just having that conversation when are having even an interview with someone and level setting and sharing, here's what's actually realistic and here's what probably every other marketer will tell you. And here will be the trade-off if you sort of don't follow that recommendation. And what I've seen is founders are very open to it because as I mentioned, they're technical and they don't know that all these things are different, skill sets and expertise and how much time they take to do all of them. So that's my recommendation.
And who have to educate founders?
Human resources, HR, recruiters, I think they all should feel confident to push back and to kind of share okay, if you do want someone to do all these things, here's the trade-off. It's someone who can't be strategic, they're going to be just tactical, or they're going to do all these things, but they're only going to do about half of them well, or maybe some of them poorly because they just don't have the skill set. It's up to all of us, one founder at a time. I think we need to sort of set the stage too and set the expectation.
Let's talk about different stages of company development and the types of marketers needed to each stage. Does a startup need CMO? Share your experience and let's go through each stage and you can share what exactly they should expect from marketer at each of the stages.
Yeah. So I don't think a startup necessarily needs a CMO in title, but they do need one of their first marketing hires to be strategic. So ideally, they have that perfect combination of strategic leader, but they can roll up their sleeves and be tactical until they can hire a team or contractors or an agency. You can't have one or the other because that won't be setting you up for success. If you have someone that's super strategic but doesn't know how to actually do the work, that's not great. If you have someone tactical, then they're not going to know how to run a strategy or, sort of be that leader that you need for that function of the company. A ton of founders make this mistake. They hire an entry-level marketer who's a really strong executor, but has no strategic chops. So the marketing suffers because there's no strategy, or the strategy is coming from someone who's a technical executive and they have no business leading marketing. Maybe they've picked up a few things here and there, but that's not their domain. So as an effect, the marketer gets blamed when things don't perform as well as expected because, they're not set up for success. So if you're thinking about, your first marketing hire, I like to start with maybe a director level role, which means that you have the experience and the background to be strategic, but You're sort of fresh out of that tactical phase and you know how to get the job done if needed. I would say, like what we were talking about earlier, is a lot of folks just want to hire one marketer to manage the entire brand positioning, marketing. And I think that's a huge mistake. I think your marketing team should not be one marketing hire. It should be at least two to start. You hire that first director, strategic role, and then you give them the budget and the autonomy to hire someone underneath them to support them. And that can be a marketing generalist. It can be someone who's in charge of, multiple functions. And then you kind of identify over time, where are the gaps? What are things you need that both of you can't do or you don't have the time to do? And you kind of go from there. My also thing I like to do is I don't like just to hire someone who can do one thing, but like a few things really well. So you don't have to hire three different people to do the job of one person. I did this really effectively at Nil. We hired a content manager versus a
Mhm.
social media manager. So in addition to social media, she was also in charge of writing blog posts. She was also in charge of the newsletter, in charge of developing, video content. And so she's able to do like three or four different jobs in that one sort of umbrella of content.
Content, yeah.
And, for more specialized functions like events, right? It's harder for them to kind of move in between functions. But what I definitely look for is someone who can, not just do the regular old, crypto conference event, but they have specializations in doing, VIP dinners. Maybe they do offsites. They do multiple type of virtual events, whether it be, working with StreamYard or, YouTube or X Spaces or, a digital conference platform. I want someone who's super well rounded who can do any type of event that we're looking for versus having to like go with an agency or like work with an outside consultant for certain things. So, I think it's important also to look at your business objectives and goals. Like what are the things, you need most from marketing? And that's where you want to invest versus hiring for all these roles you don't know if you need, but maybe you need them down the line. It's like, establish your foundation and build from there. And I'll just go back and emphasize like don't hire one marketer. Hire, a marketer who can immediately hire at least one other marketer. And something I've done too when I haven't had budget to bring on someone full time is to hire fractional employees, hire consultants, people that can take that workload off and are specialists. Like right now, I'm working with a PR consultant, a media manager, a designer. All three are contract workers, but they take an incredible load off my plate. So I'm able to focus on the strategic pieces of this function. And I also do a lot of executional work as well. So that's another option. That's probably very long-winded, but that's sort of how I think about it.
No, it's great. It's great answer because I know that many startups they lack of understanding of how to hire their first marketer or not the first, but how to build all the structure. And yeah, and actually now I see that some companies have finally have roles like brand strategist or like head of brand, and not many Web3 companies had this before, like a year ago. It was super rare thing. But now we see lack of storytelling, lack of like good insights and like humanized things. And now companies understand that they don't need like paid marketing. They need storytelling and they need this connection with people and explain their story and like their idea. So finally,
Finally, yes.
this industry is mature enough to open these roles and hire people
Yeah.
to create the stories.
It's like, would you hire one engineer to build your product? No. So why would you hire one marketer to build your brand, which is like sort of the face of your product? It actually is like how your product lives and dies, on Twitter in this market. So it's actually maybe arguably the most important piece of a company because if no one knows about you, then what are you building? Like,
What do you look for when you hire and build marketing team? Like,
so I've built teams in both Web 2 and Web 3. I was thinking about this, and I think there's like four key traits that I'm looking for. I think number one is grit, just the ability to like get shit done, just roll up their sleeves and do what it takes, no matter what, even if it's outside of their responsibilities. Just that resourcefulness, right? Another one is proactiveness. I love people that come to me with solutions instead of problems. I think it's a sign of maturity and a sign of great critical thinking. And it's also very helpful in marketing and in events in particular when a lot of things go wrong. Adaptability, it's a must have in this industry. To being able to think on the fly, to make changes on the fly, not let it irk you, not get super frustrated or upset when things aren't going a certain way. And you got to have someone who's adaptable. And then last but not least, I think it kind of makes a break or team is basically like a positive attitude. I know some people talk about like a can do attitude, but even just like someone who is positive, who shows up every day, who is pleasant to work with, that sort of makes a huge difference. It affects the morale of a team. It rubs off on others and
Yeah,
helps
of
them sort of
course.
like rise to the occasion. So those are like key things, and they're kind of like soft skills, honestly. Well, all of them are soft skills, but I found that that's sort of the key thread between all sort of my best performing hires, and of course, I've made bad hires too. But that's something I look for. I also love people that go above and beyond. They go the extra mile. They do their homework, and that starts at the interview process. So, they are tailoring their resume to the job description. They're taking that time to do that. They have researched me. They researched what I'm
Yeah.
posting on Twitter, my background. They researched the company past the homepage. And then also, some folks will even they won't wait to be contacted if they've been selected for an interview. They'll be like, "Hey, I submitted an application. I'm really interested in your company for these reasons. I really hope you consider me." Like just taking that extra step in a position you're really interested in makes a huge difference for hiring managers. And that also goes up to that trait of proactivity and grittiness in trying to get things done. I'm like, I want that person on my team who's gonna like take that next step to get things done. And then I mentioned earlier, like I love hiring people that can flex in multiple areas. I don't want to just like a social media manager, an intern or whatever. Like I want someone who is like a content creator, strategist, has experience with video, with events, with, a little bit of design. And that's something that's actually not that hard to find. People that are creating content these days, it's over multiple
Yeah.
platforms, it's in multiple formats. So it's actually, don't narrow your field too much there. So yeah, those are some of the things I kind of look for when I'm building a team.
I think your approach is great and very strategic and mature. I really like your approach to hire people, and I wish all hiring managers had the same approach and vision. What can you recommend to people if they want to grow their network in the Web3 field?
I want to acknowledge that it's very hard and intimidating at first, especially if you're new to the industry, but there's a lot of low hanging fruit to start building your network. And it's okay if you sort of take this advice in baby steps. So, perfect example I mentioned earlier when I first started at Mina Foundation, my first job in Web3, I really leaned on my teammates and nurtured those relationships. And they introduced me to people that they were connected with, and which sort of starts that network effect. And I will say the people that I made friends with and worked with at Nina, I still have regular calls with them. I still talk to them on Telegram. I still see them at conferences. Those are friendships that will never end and have benefited me tenfold because they know someone who knows someone, they've shared a resource, they want to, send a second pair of eyes on my marketing plan for something. It's really important to stay close with those colleagues. I've also done the same with my team at Nil Foundation, still very close with many folks there as well. I think, it goes without saying everyone in this industry is probably on Twitter or should be on Twitter. Pretty easy thing to get on there and start engaging with others' content, follow people, and then start DMing folks that you admire, you want to connect with one on one. That builds relationships because then you start seeing those people around, you start building that relationship online. It makes it easier to actually introduce yourself when you see them, if you see them in person, which
Yeah.
is kind of the last piece, right? And, you need to sort of find your people at events. Events in the crypto industry are very overwhelming and they're very technical, right? You're dealing with a lot of developers, researchers, folks that of course you can speak with, but they can't like relate to you in the same way as your fellow marketers. So whenever I go to an event, I always prioritize marketing specific events. And about a year ago, I think I hosted the first marketing event ever.
Yeah, I
It was the
remember.
ve-
Yeah.
with Clear actually, and a couple others from Mina and other organizations. And it was such a success and people wanted more. So at DevCon in Bangkok last year, Claire ran an entire conference for marketers and there was multiple events, hosted throughout the week. I hosted a happy hour in partnership with Hype. And so it's sort of like we started this, this flywheel and now this sort of trend of now at every, major crypto event, there's some content for marketers or there's some place for marketers to go and network. Now, of course, not everyone listening to this is probably a marketer, but think about that from, the perspective, maybe you're a designer, maybe you're in business or growth, like how can maybe you start a community for those people because there is a need for it. And all it took was literally me just sending out on Twitter, like, I'm thinking of hosting a marketing happy hour. Who would come? And I got hundreds of DMs. And I started a Telegram group because I wanted to start talking with people and collaborating with people. So sometimes it just takes like just asking, just putting yourself out there. If you can't find your community, like create one because there's a need for it. It might be niche, but there is a need for it. I guess going back to it, my last piece of advice is, find your people at events, make time to have dinner with them, coffee with them, meet up with them at a conference, go to a marketing event. There's usually at least one or two or sometimes five or six, DevCon, ECC, Denver. So make that a priority because it's truly been one of the biggest benefits of expanding and growing my network.
Should a person stick to one community or stay community agnostic or like independent?
Yeah. I'm still dabbling in many communities. And I'm trying to think of or not think, I'm trying to figure out like what works for me. To be honest with you, sometimes, there's a lot to manage. There's a lot of messages to read. There's a lot of noise. So I kind of just drop in when I'm like, hey, I want to see kind of like what people are saying about this, or maybe I have something that I need input on. So I would say just like try multiple things. I think everyone's doing that. I don't know if there's anyone that's just like, I'm just a part of this community or just a part of that community. I think personally, the more the merrier, and you get different things from different communities or groups, right?
I see how many people, especially women, stick to some communities, like some chains, for example, Barra Bodies, and they grow their entire careers or social presence based on participating in this community.
That's a great example of like a very successful, like female focused community as well, which as we both know, there's not a lot of that. So I think maybe that's part of the magic too, is that there's only so many places you can go to have those female connections of Web3.
Web3 is still feels like a closed ecosystem, and like everyone knows everyone, and startups often compete for the same candidates. Can we overcome this?
Yeah, I think you just need to look outside of Web3. It was a huge talent pool of Web2 marketers who are super smart, super capable, and very bored. They want excitement, they want something new, and Web is like going very mainstream. Like there's a ton of AI jobs right now. There's a ton of people, interested in stable coins and investing in altcoins. And so I think it's the perfect time, especially because now our industry is again focusing on video content, TikTok, newsletter, email marketing, all things that Web2 marketers are very familiar and experienced doing. And again, we're just fumbling through and trying to figure out on the fly. So I think like there, of course, is a learning curve and it takes time to onboard someone and get them up to speed, like, 6 months to a year in some cases. But I think there'll be long-term gains for those short-term pains. And if we want to grow as an industry and if we want to reach mainstream, like we need the marketers who know how to reach them. And we need to know they need to like come in and help us understand those channels to reach them. So that's what I would say. I would say, to hiring managers, to recruiters, heads of HR, like look beyond the Web3 talent pool. Because also a lot of folks that are in Web2 are actually, retail investors in crypto. We're interested. They're going to the meetups. They want to break in, but no one's giving them a chance. So give them a chance.
And the last question, actually, it's not a question, but ask for advice to aspiring marketers or entering the space in addition to growing the network. What else can you recommend?
I did She5 season 12 last
Me
year.
too.
Yeah. Okay. I guess we did it together and didn't know. I should have done it way sooner. I wish I would have done it when I first joined the industry or something like it. If you're a guy listening to this, I think it's so important to like have that community, have those building blocks versus like figuring it out on the fly, just so that you know what everyone's talking about in the beginning and not, frantically trying to figure it out. So I would say get educated. Don't be afraid to ask questions or stupid questions. I think I was a little bit afraid, and LLMs weren't as big back then, so I couldn't ask ChatGPT all my stupid questions. So ask a lot of questions, be vulnerable, join a community that supports that. Shifi is a great option for female identifying folks. And then also just immerse yourself in the culture, like go to the events, put yourself out there, network as much as you feel comfortable doing. And if anyone like needs more tips on networking, I'm happy to chat on Twitter, Telegram about that. Because if you are quiet and withdrawn and aren't willing to put yourself out there, you're not really going to get much in return. So those are my best pieces of advice.
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay. Thank you for your experience, sharing your knowledge and advice with everyone. I'm sure it will be helpful and inspiring. So, guys, I will leave all the links under this episode. You can follow Lindsay and ask her about marketing and about everything you want to know, industry networking and building relationships in the Web3 space.